I came home from work on a Tuesday in April to find my entire life packed into 4 cardboard boxes on the sidewalk outside the Man I Love's apartment, and a note on the kitchen counter that said only 4 words. The boxes were the kind you get from a moving company, the medium size, with the little fold-down handle holes on the sides. There were exactly 4 of them. They were stacked 2 and 2 on the brick sidewalk in front of 47 Trad Street, in the part of historic Charleston where the live oaks grow over the road, and the Spanish moss hangs down so heavy it looks like the trees are crying. My name was written on the side of each box in black Sharpie, in handwriting I would have known in any room in the world. Sawyer, 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 Sawyer. A light rain was just starting to come down, that warm April rain that smells like wisteria and wet brick, and the cardboard on the top box was already starting to darken along one corner. I stood there on the sidewalk in my swim coach windbreaker with my gym bag over my shoulder, and for about 30 seconds I just looked at them. I could not connect the boxes to my life. I kept thinking somebody had made a mistake. Somebody had delivered the wrong things to the wrong address. I could see, through the slats of the top box, the edge of my mother's photograph in its silver frame, the one I had carried with me from a 1-bedroom apartment in Savannah, to a college dorm at SCAD to 2 different rentals in Charleston, and finally up to the 3rd floor of this building with the iron balconies and the harbor view. The photograph was wedged in between a folded gray hoodie and the corner of a hardback book I had been reading in bed 2 nights ago. That was the part that finally cracked me. The book had a bookmark in it. I had stopped on page 184 and put it down on the nightstand before I turned off the lamp. Before I go any further, before I tell you what was waiting for me upstairs, I need to ask you something. If somebody you trusted has ever taken the best thing in your life and turned it against you, and made you the villain in a story you did not know was being written, drop a comment below right now, and tell me where you are watching from. I want to know I am not the only one. And listen, if you have made it this far with me, hit that subscribe button before you keep going, because what I am about to tell you is the story I am still trying to understand, and I would rather tell it to people who are going to stay. Okay. The building was a 5-story converted antebellum with 2 apartments per floor. Reid and I lived in 3B. I had a key. I had had a key for 8 months. I went up the stairs because the elevator in that building is old and slow, and I needed to be moving. And I unlocked our door with a hand that was shaking just a little, and I called out his name. Reid. The apartment was empty. The lamp by the window was on. The lamp by the window is always on, because Reid is the kind of man who thinks a room without a lamp on is a room that is depressed. I walked through the front hall and into the kitchen, and there on the marble countertop was my key, the one off my key ring, the one I had been carrying around in my pocket every day for 8 months. It was sitting on top of a folded piece of legal pad paper, yellow, with one piece of tape holding it down. I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was his. The 4 words were these: I trusted you. Don't come back. I read them 3 times. I read them the way you read directions to a place you do not believe is real. I turned the paper over to see if there was anything on the back. There was not. I picked up my key. It was warm, because it had been sitting under the kitchen light. I put it back down on the counter. I do not know why. It felt important to leave it. I want to take you back. I have to take you back. Because if I do not, you will not understand what I lost that afternoon. You will not understand why I stood in the middle of that kitchen and could not breathe, and why I could not pick up the phone for 40 minutes, and why, when I finally did, I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the dishwasher and dialed his number 27 times in a row. 2 years ago, I was 24 years old. I was a swim coach at a private club called the Battery Aquatic Club, which is exactly what it sounds like. It sits on the southern tip of the Charleston Peninsula, 3 blocks from the actual Battery. And the membership is mostly white women in tennis skirts and men who own boats they never use. I had taken the job because it paid better than the YMCA, and because the head coach, a 60-year-old woman named Beth who had once swum in the Olympic trials, had let me come in and teach a single lesson, and had then walked me into her office and said, "Honey, where have you been hiding? I worked 4 lessons a day, 5 days a week, and I made enough to rent half a duplex in West Ashley and put a little money away every month. And on Sundays I drove out to Sullivan's Island and swam in the ocean until I could not feel my arms. I had been gay since I was 13 years old. I had come out to one person in college, my best friend Kenji, who I am going to tell you about in a minute. I had not come out to anybody else. My mother had died when I was 19, of an aggressive cancer that came on in February and finished her by June, and my father had been gone since I was 12, and the cousin in Asheville who occasionally remembered I existed was not somebody I was going to come out to. So I had grown up gay and alone in the way that some of you understand without me explaining, and I had spent most of my early 20s believing, in a quiet way that I never said out loud, that I was going to be alone forever, and that this was going to be fine. Then on a Tuesday afternoon in March, a man named Reid Whitaker walked into the club for a 4 p.m. private lesson. He was 27 years old. He was training for an Olympic distance triathlon. He was tall, just over 6 feet, with dark brown hair that he kept short, and the kind of pale blue eyes you get when you grow up on the water. He was wearing a black Speedo and a club towel slung over one shoulder, and he walked up to me at the edge of the lap pool and held out his hand and said, "Reid, I think I'm yours for the next hour." I shook his hand. His palm was warm. The handshake was the firm, friendly, no-question handshake that men from old Charleston families learn before they learn to ride a bike. I told him I was Sawyer. I told him to get in the water and show me what he had. He got in. He swam 2 laps. His freestyle was a mess. He was a bilateral breather who turned his head too far, which dropped his hips, which made him drag like a tugboat, and I stood at the edge of the pool and watched him with my arms crossed and my heart doing a small embarrassing thing in my chest that I had not felt in a long time. I waited until he came up at the wall. I told him to take off the goggles. I sat down on the deck. I had him put his arms in the position I wanted them. I corrected the angle of his elbow with my hand on his elbow, and I did not let my hand stay there a second longer than it needed to, and he looked up at me from the water, and he had that particular kind of attention in his eyes that you can either ignore or you can answer, and I have spent most of my life ignoring it. I did not ignore it that day. I did not say anything either. I just held his look for 1 beat too long, and his mouth did this very small thing at the corner, and I went back to his elbow. At the end of the lesson, when he was drying his hair on the bench and I was filling out the lesson notes on a clipboard, he said, very casually, "Any chance you'd want to grab a coffee sometime? I want to tell you what that sentence did to me. I want you to understand it. I had been hit on at the pool before, by men, by women, by the occasional terrifying mother of a teenage student. I had always smiled and looked at the clipboard, but Reid Whitaker asked me to coffee the way a man asks you for the time, and there was something in the easiness of it, in the lack of performance, that made me believe, for the first time in my entire adult life, that being chosen was a thing I was allowed to say yes to. I said, yeah, I would like that." We had coffee that Friday at Black Tap on King Street. We had coffee again the next week. By the end of the month, we were having dinner. By the end of the second month, I was sleeping at his apartment on Trad Street 2 nights a week. By 6 months in, he had asked me, on a Saturday morning in October when the rain was coming sideways off the harbor, if I wanted to move my things in for good. I said yes before he had finished the sentence. I want to tell you about Reid. I want to tell you the truth about him, because what comes next is going to make him sound like a man who walked away too easy, and he was not. Reid Whitaker grew up in a family that has had its name on 3 different buildings in downtown Charleston since before the Civil War. His father is a federal judge. His mother is a retired estate lawyer who serves on the boards of about 6 different historical societies. He came out to them in his second year of law school, in the parlor of their house on Trad Street, and his father did not speak to him for 14 months. By the time I met him, the relationship had been repaired into something correct, something polite, something that involved dinners and Christmas and a careful smile from his mother that did not quite reach her eyes. He had paid a price to be himself, and the price had taught him things. The thing he had learned was this: he took care of people. He took care of the woman who cleaned his apartment, who he overpaid by 40% and always made coffee for. He took care of his little sister Mara, who was 22 when I met her, and looked at him like he was a son she had been orbiting her whole life. He took care of me. He took care of me in small, invisible ways I did not even understand were happening until I had been in his apartment for 3 months and realized that the coffee was always made by the time I got out of the shower, that the kind of granola I liked was always in the cabinet, that my swim parka was always hanging on the second hook by the door even though I had never asked him to leave a hook for it. I had never been taken care of before, not since my mother died. I did not, for a long time, know what to do with it. I would catch myself thanking him for things people are not supposed to have to thank each other for. He would look at me with this small puzzled expression and say, "Sawyer, you live here. 8 months ago I moved in fully. I gave up the duplex in West Ashley. I brought a U-Haul to his door on a Sunday morning in August, and Reid came down in flip-flops and shorts and helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs in the August heat, and his mother showed up at the bottom of the stairs at one point with a vase of magnolia branches and a key lime pie from her own kitchen, and she handed them to me, and she said, 'Welcome, Sawyer,' in a voice that was as polite as a closed door but which I understood, for the first time, to be her best attempt at saying, 'I love my son, and you appear to be a decent person, and I am willing to try.' That was 8 months ago. For 8 months, I had a key in my pocket and a hook for my parka and a man who turned the lamp on in the front window every night because he said dark rooms made him sad. I had a life. I had the first real life I had ever had, and then about 4 months ago, something started to change. It was not sudden. That is the part that makes it so hard to explain. If it had been sudden, I would have caught it. It was the way a fever comes on. You go to bed fine and you wake up just a little warm, and by the next afternoon you are slightly more than just a little warm, and by the day after that you are sweating, and you cannot remember when you last felt normal, but you know it was a while ago. That was Reid, starting around the holidays, quieter at dinner, looking at his phone more, asking me, in this very even voice that did not sound like an accusation but was, where I had been on Tuesday afternoon, who I had been with, why my drive home from the club had taken 45 minutes instead of 30. I told myself it was the Henderson case. He had been working an enormous real estate dispute for one of the firm's oldest clients, and he had been bringing it home in the form of dark circles under his eyes and silence on the couch. I told myself it would pass. I told myself we had built something that could survive a few hard months. 3 weeks ago, I asked him if he wanted to take a day trip to Magnolia Plantation that weekend, just to get out of the apartment, just to be in our bodies again. He did not look up from his laptop. He said, "I have plans." I asked him with who. He said, "Just plans, Sawyer." It was the first time in 2 years that he had used my name as a wall instead of a door. I went to bed before he did that night and lay on my side with my face turned to the window, and he came in an hour later and got under the covers behind me, and he did not put his arm around my waist the way he had every single night for 8 months, and I lay there in the dark and I felt something cold open up under my ribs that I did not have a word for yet. This morning I had kissed him on the forehead before I left for the 6:00 a.m. lap swim. He had been turned away from me, half asleep, breathing slow into his pillow. I had thought, as I closed the bedroom door behind me, that I was going to come home that night and ask him what was wrong. I was going to sit him down and tell him I could feel him going away from me and I needed him to tell me why, even if the answer was hard, even if the answer was that he had stopped loving me. I had decided it on the drive-in. I had decided it before my first student of the day, an 8-year-old named Olivia, who was working on her flip turns. I came home at 5:30 the afternoon. I parked on Atlantic Street the way I always did. I walked the 2 blocks to Trad. I came around the corner and I saw the boxes on the sidewalk before I saw the building. I stood in the middle of the kitchen I had lived in for 8 months with the key warm under my hand and Reid's note in my other hand and my mother's silver-framed photograph waiting in a wet cardboard box on the sidewalk 3 flights below me, and the only thought I could form, the only one, was that there had to be a mistake. Somebody had made a terrible, terrible mistake. I just did not know yet that the person who had made it was me. I do not remember walking back down the stairs. I remember the carpet runner on the landing of the 2nd floor, the small worn patch in the middle where the pile had been flattened down by 200 years of feet, and I remember thinking that I had walked over that exact piece of carpet probably 1,000 times in 8 months, and I had never once looked at it on the way up. I remember the smell of the stairwell, which was always the same, old wood and somebody's perfume on the 2nd floor, and the faint mustiness of a building that had been built before electricity. I remember stepping out the front door onto Trad Street and the rain being heavier now, real rain, not a mist anymore, soaking through the shoulders of my windbreaker in about 30 seconds. The boxes were getting wet. That is what I remember thinking. I had to get the boxes out of the rain. I have a 2014 Toyota Tacoma. I had parked it on Atlantic Street 2 blocks away. I made 4 trips. I carried the boxes one at a time. because the cardboard was already soft and I was afraid if I tried to stack them they would split. I walked from Trad to Atlantic and back 4 times in the April rain, with no umbrella, while a tour group of about 15 people in plastic ponchos came down the opposite sidewalk listening to a guide tell them about the historic Pinckney Means house, which is 2 doors down from 47 Trad. I remember the guide saying the words, and as you can see, this is one of the few remaining examples of single house architecture in the original style, and I remember nodding to her as I walked past her with my own life in a box. And she nodded back, because we are in the South, and that is what we do. By the time I got the 4th box into the bed of my truck, I was soaked. I sat down in the driver's seat with the door open and my feet on the running board, and I dialed Reid's number. Straight to voicemail. I dialed again. Straight to voicemail. I dialed a 3rd time and let it ring all the way through, just to hear his voice say his own name on the recording. And at the beep I said, "Reid, please. I do not know what is happening. Please call me. Please. I love you. Please." I called 24 more times that night. I drove to a Holiday Inn Express in North Charleston. I picked it because it was off I-26 and because it was the kind of place where the front desk clerk does not look at you twice when you check in soaking wet at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday with red eyes. The clerk was a young black woman with very long lashes and a name tag that said Jasmine. She gave me a room on the 4th floor. She did not ask me any questions. I have remembered her kindness for the rest of my life, the way she just slid the key card across the counter and said, "Have a good night, sir," in a voice that did not ask me to prove anything. I carried 2 of the boxes up to the room. I left the other 2 in the truck. I sat on the polyester comforter, and I texted Reid. "Reid, please. Please just tell me what happened. Please call me. I'm at the Holiday Inn off Aviation. Please." I watched the blue bubble of my last text and waited for the little dot pattern that means he is typing. It did not come. I watched it for an hour. I watched it until the phone screen went dark on its own, and then I tapped it on and watched it again. He did not read it. The read receipt never turned on. That was the part that hurt the most that first night. Not the silence. The fact that he had turned off the receipt so I could not even know whether the words had reached him. I did not sleep. I lay on top of the comforter in my wet clothes for about an hour, and then I got up and got in the shower and stood under the hot water until I could not feel my fingers, and then I came out and put on a clean t-shirt from one of the boxes and got under the covers, and I lay on my back and stared at the popcorn ceiling and waited for morning. At 7 the next morning I drove downtown. I parked in the garage on Cumberland Street and walked the 4 blocks to the offices of Whitaker, Reeve, and Lassiter, which sit on the 2nd floor of a building on Broad Street that was built in 1801. I had been there twice before, once for the firm's holiday party, where Reid had introduced me to his father in front of the bar, and the senior Whitaker had shaken my hand the way men of his generation in this city shake hands when they have decided to be polite about a thing they would prefer not to be polite about. The second time, for lunch with Reid in his corner office, where I had brought him a sandwich from a place on King Street, because he had been working through and had texted me the word starving. I took the elevator to the 2nd floor. I walked into the lobby. The receptionist was a woman in her 50s named Carol, who I had met at the holiday party, and who had been very kind to me, who had taken me by the arm and walked me over to a tray of crab cakes and said, "Honey, eat something. You look like you are going to faint." She looked up from her computer when I walked in and her face did something I will never forget. It went through 3 emotions in about half a second: recognition, sympathy, and then, on top of both of those, a kind of professional regret. She had been given instructions. I could see it on her face. "Sawyer, honey, I am so sorry, but Mr. Whitaker is not seeing visitors today. Carol, please, I just need 5 minutes. I cannot help you, sweetheart. I am so sorry." He left specific instructions this morning. Specific instructions about me by name. Her eyes filled. She did not answer me. She did not have to. I stood in the lobby for a second longer than I should have. The phone on her desk was ringing. She picked it up. She turned her chair away from me very slightly, in the gentle way you turn away from a thing you cannot fix, and I walked back out the door and down the stairs and out onto Broad Street, and I sat down on the granite step of the building across the street, and I watched the front entrance for about 30 minutes in case he came out for coffee or for a meeting or for any reason at all. He did not come out. I do not know if he was even in the office. I have spent 2 years not knowing if he was even in the office. I called Kenji. He picked up on the first ring. Sawyer? Oh my God. What is wrong? Your voice sounds... I started crying. Right there on the granite step on Broad Street in front of a federal building, with two tourists eating biscuits on the sidewalk 20 feet away. I cried into the phone for about 30 seconds before I could get a word out. Kenji did not rush me. He just stayed on the line. When I could speak, I told him. I told him about the boxes. I told him about the note. I told him about Carol. I told him that Reid would not pick up the phone and that I had no idea what had happened. That I had woken up that morning with a man who turned the lamp on every night because dark rooms made him sad, and I had come home to a curb. Kenji said, "Come to my place. Right now. Are you okay to drive?" "I do not know." "Sawyer, come to my place. Park downstairs. I will come down if you cannot get out of the car." I drove the 7 blocks to his building. He met me in the parking garage. He took my keys out of my hand and locked the truck for me and walked me up to his unit. He had ordered miso ramen from the place on Cumming Street that we both liked. He had set out a fresh towel on the bathroom counter. He drew me a bath. I am 26 years old and a grown man, and my best friend drew me a bath that morning like I was a child, and I sat in his guest bathroom in 2 inches of hot water in a tub that smelled like eucalyptus, and I cried again, quietly, into a washcloth. When I came out, in clean clothes he had pulled from one of the boxes I had left in the truck. The ramen was on his coffee table. He had cut up a green onion. He had poured me a glass of water with ice. He sat down on the couch next to me with his knees pulled up under him, the way he had been sitting next to me on couches since we were 19 years old, and he said, "Eat." Slowly. I ate. I do not remember tasting any of it. After a while he said very carefully, "Sawyer, I have to ask you something, and I want you to know I am not accusing you of anything. I am just trying to understand what could have happened." "Okay, has anybody, hit on you lately? Like, anybody at work? Anybody at the club?" "No. I mean, sometimes one of the dads will be a little flirty in a way that does not mean anything. Tomas teases me, but he is married. You know him. Nothing. Anybody around you that Reid might have, gotten the wrong idea about?" I thought about it. I really thought about it. I tried to put myself in Reid's place. I tried to think of a single person, a single afternoon, a single text he could have seen on my lock screen. I could not. There was nothing. There had been nothing. "Just you," I said. "I mean you and Tomas. But Tomas is happily married with twins." Kenji nodded slowly, looking at the bowl of ramen. He said, "Maybe he saw a text. Or he misread something. People go to weird places when they get scared. He is not a man who goes to weird places, Kenji. He is the most steady man I have ever known. Even steady people break, Sawyer." I did not have an answer to that. I slept on his couch that night. I slept hard. The way you sleep after you have not slept the night before. That gray, dreamless sleep that is more like passing out than resting. I woke up at 4 in the morning with a stiff neck and a pillow that smelled like a stranger's detergent. And I lay there in the dark of his living room with the digital clock on his microwave glowing blue across the room, and I tried to remember if Reid had ever told me, even once, the actual name of whoever it was he thought I was sleeping with. He had not. Not in any of our weird, tense conversations of the last 4 months. Not in any of the small, hostile questions. He had circled it. He had never named it. The next morning, Mara called. Mara is Reid's younger sister. I had loved her from the first time I met her. She was 24, working on her master's in art history at the College of Charleston, and she had walked into our apartment one afternoon, taken one look at me, hugged me, and said, "Oh, thank God. You're hot." I was worried. She had been the first person in Reid's family to treat me like family. She called me from her car at 9 in the morning. I could hear the road behind her voice. "Sawyer, what did you do to him?" "Mara, I swear to God I did not do anything. I do not know what happened. He will not pick up the phone. He's been a mess for months, Sawyer. He told me last week he thought you were seeing somebody else." "Who?" He would not say. But he had pictures. "Sawyer, what is going on?" He showed me a video. He was crying. My brother does not cry. The blood went out of my face. Pictures. A video. Plural. I could feel Kenji watching me from across the room with concern on his face, the way he had been watching me for the last 2 days. And I could feel the bottom of something else, a different thing, a thing I did not yet have a name for, starting to drop out from under me. I need to talk to him, Mara. Please. He's not going to talk to you, Sawyer. He told me last night he is done. He said he has been done for a while. He said the things he saw. Her voice broke. He said the things he saw made him not know who he had been living with. What things, Mara? Please. What things? I don't know what the things were. He would not show me. He just had them on his phone. I went to his parents' house that afternoon. I had nowhere else to go and nothing else to try. The house on Trad Street, the family house, was 3 blocks from the apartment I had just been kicked out of. I had been there 4 times in my life. 2 Christmases, an Easter brunch, and 1 Sunday afternoon when Adelaide had asked Reid to come help her move a piece of furniture and he had brought me along. She answered the door in pearls. She always answered her door in pearls. She had a pair of gardening gloves in her left hand because she had been pruning the azaleas in the back courtyard. Mr. Beaumont. She had not called me Mr. Beaumont in a year and a half. She had called me Sawyer. She had once, last Thanksgiving, called me sweetheart by accident, and had then corrected herself. Embarrassed. Mrs. Whitaker. Please. I am not here to make a scene. I just want to know what he thinks I did. I want to know what he saw. Please. I do not even know what I am being accused of. She looked at me for a long moment. She was a small woman, 5'2", and she had to tilt her head up to look at me, but the angle did not give me any advantage. It never had. She was the kind of woman who could make a 6-foot man feel small from below. My son is heartbroken, she said. He is in my study right now. He has not slept in 3 days. Whatever you did, Mr. Beaumont, you did it slowly, and you did it for a long time, and I am not interested in your version of it. I do not think Reid is either. I think the kindest thing you can do for him now is to go away. I did not do anything. She did not answer me. She just looked at me with those very tired blue eyes, the same blue as her son's, and she stepped back into the dim cool of the foyer, and she closed the door, gently, with the very small click of a brass latch. I drove out to the Battery and parked. I sat on a bench on the seawall and I looked at Fort Sumter sitting out there in the middle of the harbor in the 4 o'clock light. A young couple in their 20s walked past me holding hands, the woman in a yellow sundress and the man with his arm around her shoulders, and they were laughing at something on her phone, and I had to put my face in my hands for a minute. I drove to the club. I was not on the schedule. I had called out for the rest of the week, but I needed to be in a building that did not contain Reid's note, or Kenji's couch, or Adelaide's pearls, and the club, at 4:30 on a Wednesday, was almost empty. I walked through the lobby, past the membership desk where the afternoon woman, Brenda, gave me a small, confused wave, and I went around the back to the staff hallway, and I stood for a second at the door of the pool deck with my hand on the handle. Then I turned, instead, and I went down to Tomas's office. Tomas was the assistant aquatics director. He was 35, married to a pediatric nurse named Carmen, with twin 7-year-old daughters whose pictures covered the wall above his desk in a great chaotic mosaic. He was at his computer eating a granola bar. He looked up when I walked in, and the expression on his face did what Carol's had done the day before. It went through about 3 things. Last one was, oh no. Sawyer, hey, sit down, brother. I sat down. He closed his laptop. Beth told me you took the rest of the week. You okay? Tomas, can I ask you something? And I need you to be honest with me. He waited. My friend, Kenji, the architect. He looked at me very steadily. What about him? Have you ever interacted with him here? At the club? Outside of the one time I introduced you. Tomas set the granola bar down on his desk. He sat back in his chair. He put both his hands behind his head, the way he does when he is choosing words. He said, Sawyer, I was going to talk to you about this. I have been trying to find a way to say it for a few weeks. I did not breathe. He came in here 3 months ago, asked for my schedule, said he was planning a surprise birthday party for you, and wanted to make sure he had your weekend free. I gave him a copy of your shifts. I did not think anything of it. Okay. Then about 5 weeks ago he came in again. He told me he was redecorating your place, your apartment with Reid, as a gift. He wanted to know when you were going to be out of town for the next tournament, so he could measure things. I told him you weren't going out of town. He just nodded and left. I felt cold spread up the back of my neck. And then, Tomas was looking at me very carefully now, the way you look at a man who is sitting on a chair you are about to flip over. 2 weeks ago I saw him sitting in his car in the parking lot. After your 5 p.m. lesson. He was just sitting there. He saw me see him. He drove away. I sat in Tomas's office for a long time after he stopped talking. He did not push me. He just sat there with me. After a while he said, "Sawyer, I do not know that man. I am not making any accusations. But he is weird about you, and you should be careful." I drove back to the Holiday Inn that night instead of to Kenji's apartment. I told Kenji over text I had a migraine and just needed to sleep alone in the dark. He wrote back, Of course. Get rest. Call me in the morning." I sat on the polyester comforter in my 4th-floor room with the curtains open and the lights of the I-26 overpass making a soft orange glow against the ceiling, and I went through every interaction I had had with Kenji in the last 6 months in my head. Slowly, in order, like a man reviewing a security tape. The dinners at his place. The Wednesday nights I had gone down to his apartment to help him assemble a bookshelf. The way he had, 3 months ago, casually mentioned that the unit 2 floors below mine in Reid's building had just become available, and how nice that would be, and how he had moved in within 4 weeks. I dialed his number around 9 in the evening. "Hey," he said. He sounded so warm, so happy to hear from me. "How are you feeling? Want me to bring you soup?" "No," I said. "Can I come over? I just need someone tonight." "Of course, baby. Come now. I'll make tea." I drove to his building. I parked on the street, not in the garage, because I do not know why. I went up. I knocked. He opened the door in soft gray sweatpants and a clean white t-shirt, and he hugged me, and I felt his hands on my back, and I followed him inside. His laptop was sitting open on the coffee table. The screen was lit. He had been working on something before I arrived, and he had not closed the lid. I walked past it on my way to the couch. He went into the kitchen to put the kettle on. I sat down on the couch. The screen of his laptop was less than 2 feet from my face. There was a Gmail window open on it. I could see the address bar at the top, the username on the right side of the screen, the account he was logged into, and in the inbox, near the top, a thread with a subject line. "Thought you should see this 12 of 30. The recipient field said Reid. Whitaker. Law." I did not move. I did not turn my head. I did not call out to him in the kitchen. I just looked at that screen, very steadily, and I waited for the kettle to start whistling. Heepy. The kettle did start whistling. I heard him take it off the burner. I heard the soft clink of 2 ceramic mugs being set down on his butcher block kitchen island. I heard him open the tin of jasmine tea that he had bought at a little shop in Mount Pleasant the previous summer with me beside him on a Saturday afternoon, the day he had decided he wanted to be a man with a tea tin. I heard every one of those sounds the way a man hears sounds underwater, far off and slowed down, while my eyes stayed on the screen of his laptop. I leaned forward an inch. Just an inch. The thread at the top of the inbox was not the only one. Below it, I could see another. "Thought you should see this 11 of 30. Below that, 10 of 30. Below that, 9 of 30. The numbers went down the page, each thread tagged with the same recipient. The sent folder was visible on the left side of the screen. The little number next to it said 34. He came in from the kitchen carrying both mugs. He was smiling. He had the warm, easy smile he had been smiling at me for 7 years. He set one mug down on the coffee table in front of me, and as he set it down, he saw, at the same moment, what I had been looking at, and the smile fell off his face in a way I have only ever seen on one other face in my life, which was the face of a paramedic in a hospital hallway in Savannah 7 years ago telling me my mother had not made it. Kenji froze. His hand was still on the mug. The tea inside it was rocking very slightly from the motion of him setting it down. "Sawyer." I did not look at him. I reached out very slowly, and I turned the laptop a 1/4 of an inch toward me so I could see the screen fully. "Sawyer, please. Let me close that. Let me." He moved. He tried to close the laptop. I caught his wrist before he could get there. I did not grab him hard. I did not throw his hand off. I just stopped it, gently, with my own hand, the way you would stop a child from touching a hot stove. "Don't," I said. "Don't touch it." He sat down on the coffee table on the opposite side from me. He did not let go of his mug. His knuckles were white around it. He was looking at me the way a man looks at a flood that has reached the 2nd floor of his house and is still rising. I opened the first thread. "Thought you should see this 12 of 30. There was no subject text inside the email itself, just an attachment. I clicked on it. A photo opened up on the screen. It was a picture of me, Taken from below. In the lobby of the Battery Aquatic Club, I was standing next to a man named David Renauld, who was 44 years old and one of my regular adult students. And David had his hand on my upper arm in the way a man thanks another man for a good lesson. A clap on the shoulder turned into a brief grip, the kind of contact that is over in 2 seconds and means nothing. The picture had been taken at exactly the moment his hand made contact. The caption underneath, typed in the body of the email, said, "Your boyfriend's friendly. Thought you should see how friendly." He didn't pull away. I closed it. I opened the next thread down. "Thought you should see this 11 of 30. Another attachment. A 9-second video this time. The video had been shot, clearly, from the second-floor balcony of the club, looking down at the pool deck. I was crouched at the edge of the pool talking to a teenage boy in goggles. I had my hand on the back of his head, the way a coach does when he is correcting the angle of a swimmer's chin. The video cut off after 9 seconds. Just as I was standing back up, the caption said, "He puts his hands on every student. I am not the only one who has noticed. Concerned member." The next email was a screenshot. The screenshot was of my own phone. The screen was the messaging app with the contact name redacted at the top, blacked out by Kenji with what looked like a graphics program. The conversation visible underneath was one I had had with him, Kenji, on a Tuesday afternoon 2 months ago. I had sent him a picture of myself in a new training swimsuit, standing in front of the mirrored wall of the equipment room, because Beth had ordered new team suits, and I had wanted to know if the cut made my back look weird. I had captioned it, "Too tight? Thoughts?" He had written back, "No, it's perfect. You look incredible." I had written, "Miss you. Dinner Friday?" Friday had been a dinner the three of us, me and Reid and Kenji, had at the apartment. The screenshot had cut his name out of the top, cut the part of the conversation that explained the suit was for work, cut the dinner invitation, and left only "Too tight? Thoughts? Perfect. You look incredible, miss you." I felt the room start to tilt the way a room tilts on a boat in deep water. I opened the next one, and the next, and the next. There was a video of me leaving Kenji's apartment building on a Wednesday night at 11, which was a night I had spent 2 hours helping him assemble a bookshelf from West Elm, and which Kenji had told Reid I was at, because Reid had been working late, and Reid had thanked me when I came home. The caption on the email said, "Wednesday again. Every Wednesday this month. Maybe you should ask him where he goes." There was a photo of me at a coffee shop on King Street with Tomas. We were laughing. We had been talking about the time one of Tomas's twin daughters had stuck a Cheerio up her nose at the dinner table the night before, and his wife Carmen had texted him a picture from the urgent care waiting room, and I had nearly choked on my latte. The caption said, 2 hours at Black Tap. Who is this? There was a screenshot of an Instagram story I had posted 9 months ago. A video of me holding up a birthday cake at my own birthday party, which Reid had thrown for me on the roof of his building, which Kenji had attended. The cake had been from a bakery in Mount Pleasant, and the icing had said "Happy Birthday, Sawyer," and Kenji had cropped the photo down so that the icing was not in frame. The caption said, "Cute. Who is the cake for? Where were you that night?" There were 30 of them. There were 30 of them. I sat back on his couch. I let my hands fall into my lap. I looked up at Kenji. He was crying. He was not making any noise. He was just sitting there on the coffee table with the mug of tea in his hand, and his eyes were wet, and he was looking at me with an expression that, if I had not just spent 10 minutes looking at the proof of what he had done, I might have mistaken for love. 6 months, I said. He did not answer. 6 months, Kenji. I was not yelling. My voice was very steady. I was not sure why. Some part of me had taken over. That was not the part that cries. You took the photo at my swimsuit fitting and you cut your own name out of it and you sent it to him. Sawyer, you took the video of me leaving your apartment on the night you asked me to come help you with the bookshelf. He nodded. He nodded the way you nod when a doctor tells you the test came back the way you knew it would. Why? He did not say anything. Kenji. Why? He set the mug down on the coffee table. The little click of the ceramic on the wood was the loudest thing in the apartment. He said, "Because he did not deserve you." I want to tell you what that sentence did inside me. I want you to understand it. For 7 years, since I was 19 years old and my mother had just died in a hospice room in Savannah, and Kenji Maury Davis had driven down from his parents' house in Atlanta in the middle of the night to sleep on my floor for 2 weeks, because I could not stand to be alone, I had believed that the friendship between us was the safest thing I had in the world. I had told Kenji things I had not told a therapist. I had told Kenji about kissing a boy at swim camp when I was 15. I had told Kenji about my father, who I had not seen since I was 12, who I sometimes still dreamed about. I had told Kenji how it had felt to fall in love with Reid that first time, in the second month of dating, on a boat off Sullivan's Island, when Reid had reached across me to grab a beer and his arm had brushed my chest, and I had thought, oh, Kenji had taken every one of those pieces of me, and he had built a weapon out of them, and he had pointed it at the man I loved. I said, "You have been in love with me." He nodded. He could not look at me. He was looking at his own knees. How long? He did not answer. Kenji. How long? Junior year. Since the night your mom died and I drove down. Since the next morning when you fell asleep on the couch with your head on my leg and you said thank you in your sleep and I sat there for 3 hours not moving so I would not wake you up. I felt my mouth open. I did not have anywhere to put what he had just said. I had not known. I had not known for 7 years. I had loved this man like a brother. I had introduced him to every person I had ever dated. I had been the best man at the imaginary wedding he and I had joked about at 21, where neither of us had figured out who we were going to marry, but we had decided that whoever it was, we were going to be at each other's weddings. I had given him a key to my apartment. I had let him into my home. I had let him into my life with Reid, he said. And then Reid happened, and he was rich, and he was clean, and he had a fucking harbor view, and his family knew senators. And I sat in my apartment 1 floor below his at night, and I listened to you laugh through the ceiling, and He stopped. He put his hands over his face. I thought if I just made him doubt you. A little. Not even a lot. Just enough. He would leave on his own. He would realize you two were not right for each other. And I would still be here, Sawyer. I would still be the one you came to. I would be the one you came to when it fell apart. I would have been good to you. I would have been so good to you. I have spent 7 years preparing to be good to you. I am going to be honest with you. I do not remember the exact thing I said next. I have tried to remember it. I have tried for 2 years to remember it. I cannot. It is the only piece of that night I cannot put my hand on. I think I said, "That is not love." I think I said, "That is the opposite of love." I know I said his name twice. Both times the way you say the name of a person you are about to bury. What I do remember is what he said next, very quietly, looking up at me from behind his hands. Let me fix it. Let me write to him. Let me tell him everything. I will tell him I made it up. I will tell him you never did anything wrong. I will sign whatever you want. Please, Sawyer, please. I love you. I stood up from the couch. I walked over to the coffee table. I picked up the laptop. I closed it. I tucked it under my arm. You are not going to write to him, I said. You are not going to contact him. You are not going to contact me. You are not going to send him another email. You are not going to send him a letter. You are not going to walk past him in this building. You are going to be quiet for the rest of your life when it comes to my name. Sawyer, I am taking this. The laptop. I am going to need it. He nodded. He did not try to stop me. I walked to his door. I stopped with my hand on the knob. I did not turn around. I said, looking at the wood of the door, "You used the worst night of my life to learn how to manipulate me. You used my mother. You used the way I slept on your floor at 20 when I had nowhere to go. You did not love me, Kenji. People who love you do not weaponize the worst day you have ever had. I want you to sit with that. I want you to sit with that for the rest of your life, because I am going to." I opened the door. I walked out. I closed it behind me. I did not slam it. I did not give him that. I made it down 2 flights of stairs before I had to sit down. I sat on the landing of the 2nd floor with my back against the wall and the laptop on my thighs, and I cried the way I had not cried since my mother died. Not the polite crying of an adult. The other kind. The kind that comes up from underneath. I had to put my forehead down on the laptop case to keep the sound in, because there were other people in that building, on the other side of those walls, who had nothing to do with any of this. After about 10 minutes I got up. I walked the rest of the way down. I got into my truck. I sat in the driver's seat with the laptop on the passenger seat, and I opened it, and I logged back into the email account, because he had not closed it before I left, and I scrolled to the bottom of the chain. The very last email he had sent Reid had been at 9:43 the previous Monday night. The morning before Reid had packed my things and left them on the curb. It had no attachment. It was just text. It said, "I know this has been hard to look at. I know it has taken a toll on you. But you deserve the truth. And the truth is that he has been lying to you for a long time. I am sorry to be the one. You deserve so much better. A friend who has been trying to tell you for months. A friend." He had signed it, a friend. I closed the laptop. I sat in my truck in the parking garage under his building for a long time. Long enough that the timed lights overhead clicked off twice, and I had to wave my arm to bring them back on. Long enough that a woman pushing a stroller came by and looked at me through the windshield with a small, concerned expression, and I gave her a small, reassuring nod, and she moved on. I knew what I was going to do. I had known the second I had stood up off his couch. I just needed a few minutes to know it out loud, to myself, before I drove there. I was not going to try to win Reid back. I do not think I even believed, in that moment, that winning him back was possible. The Reid Whitaker I knew was a man who, once a story had been written inside his head, did not easily let new pages be inserted into it. He had been receiving the proof of my supposed unfaithfulness for 6 months. He had been carrying it alone, in his chest, while sleeping next to me, while making me coffee, while turning the lamp on in the front window every night because dark rooms made him sad. The man I loved was already a man who had been grieving me for half a year before I had any idea I was being lost. But he deserved to know the truth. He deserved to see what had been done to him. He deserved that, if nothing else. I started the truck. I pulled out of the parking garage. I drove the 7 blocks to Trad Street. I drove past 47 Trad, where the lights were on in our apartment on the 3rd floor. And I did not let myself look up. I kept going. 2 more blocks south, and I parked across the street from the Whitaker family house, the big single house with the brass plaque on the gate, where Adelaide had closed the door on me in pearls and gardening gloves 2 days earlier. It was full dark now. The streetlights on Trad were the gas ones, the old ones, the ones that flicker. There was a single second-story window lit up at the back of the house. The one I knew was the window of Reid's father's old study, where Adelaide had told me her son was sitting and not sleeping. The light was warm and yellow, and it spilled out onto the courtyard wall. I sat in the cab of my truck for 1 minute. I put my hands on the steering wheel and I made them stop shaking. I picked up the laptop. I got out of the truck. I closed the door as quietly as I could. I walked across the cobblestones of Trad Street with a man's laptop in my hand and a story I did not yet know how to tell. And I knew with absolute clarity that even if I told it perfectly, even if every word landed in the exact correct place, there was still a very real chance I had already lost the man I loved before I ever got the chance to open my mouth. I crossed the sidewalk. I put my hand on the wrought iron gate. I pushed it open. The gate did not creak. The Whitakers maintained that gate the way they maintained everything, with quarterly attention from a man named Earl who came by in a white truck and oiled every hinge in the courtyard. I closed it behind me. I crossed the small brick walkway between the front gate and the front door, past the camellia bush that Adelaide pruned herself, past the boot scraper that had been bolted to the stoop in 1847. I climbed the 3 steps. I pressed the brass doorbell. I heard the chime go off inside the house. I heard, after a moment, the sound of slippers on hardwood. I heard the deadbolt slide back. The door opened. Adelaide stood there in a navy blue cardigan with the same string of pearls I had seen her in 2 days earlier. She had not changed out of them since lunch, probably, because Adelaide did not take her pearls off until she got into bed. She saw it was me. Her face did not change. Not visibly, but I watched her shoulders take a long, slow breath under the cardigan. "Mr. Beaumont, Mrs. Whitaker, please. I am not here to argue with you. I have something Reid needs to see. It is on this laptop. It is going to take 10 minutes. If when those 10 minutes are over he wants me to leave, I will leave and I will not come back. I swear to you on my mother. Please." She looked at me. She looked at the laptop tucked under my arm. She looked at my face, which I am sure was a wreck, and I watched something behind her eyes do a small private calculation. And then she stepped back from the door without speaking, and she opened the door wider, and she let me in. She did not walk me to him. She stood in the hallway under the chandelier with her hands folded at her waist, and she said, very quietly, "He is in the back study. I will give you 10 minutes. If at any point he asks you to leave, you leave. Sawyer, are we clear?" It was the first time she had used my first name in 2 days. "Yes, ma'am." I walked down the long center hall of the Whitaker house. past the portraits I had walked past 4 times before in 2 years, past the credenza with the family photographs in their silver frames, including one of Reid at 19 in a graduation gown that he had let me put my hand on last Easter, because I had said, "Look at you. You were a baby." And he had laughed and said I was 12. Internally, I came to the door of the back study. It was half open. I could see, through the gap, the warm yellow light of the desk lamp, and I could see the corner of his shoulder. He was sitting at his father's old leather chair facing the window. He had a glass in his hand. The glass was almost empty. I pushed the door open. He turned. He saw me. He stood up so fast he almost knocked the glass over. "What are you doing here?" His voice was rough. He had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were red. His hair was sticking up at the back the way it always did when he had been running his hand through it. He was wearing a t-shirt with a hole at the collar that I had been telling him to throw away for a year. "I love you," I said. "I'm here because I love you, and because you deserve the truth, even if it does not change anything between us. I am not going to ask you to come back. That is not what this is. Just give me 10 minutes, please." He looked at me. For a long second I thought he was going to tell me to get out. I watched his jaw work. I watched him decide. He sat back down. He nodded once at the chair across the desk. I set the laptop down on the leather blotter. I opened it. I logged into the email account. I did not say anything yet. I just opened the first thread at the top of the inbox. I turned the screen toward him. He read it. His face did not move. I opened the next one. I opened the one after that. I opened the photographs. I opened the videos. I opened the screenshot of my own text conversation with the name redacted. He went through them silently. He looked at each one for a beat too long, the way a man looks at evidence when he is trying very hard to disprove what he is seeing. He got to the email with the swimsuit screenshot, the one captioned, "Too tight? Thoughts? Perfect. You look incredible, miss you." And he made a small sound at the back of his throat. It was the sound a person makes when they put their hand on a hot pan. "Stop." He pushed the laptop very gently back across the desk toward me. "I cannot look at any more." I closed it. I sat down in the chair across from him. I folded my hands in my lap. "He sent you 30 of them," I said. "Over 6 months. All of them taken from real moments and cut from the context that made them ordinary. The swimsuit screenshot was a fitting for new team suits. Beth had ordered them. I sent the picture to him because he was the friend I asked when I needed an opinion on how I looked. The Wednesday night video was me leaving his apartment after I helped him assemble a bookshelf. He told you I was at his place that night. You thanked me when I came home. The photo with David at the pool. David is my 44-year-old adult lesson. He is married. He was thanking me for fixing his pull stroke. Reid was looking down at his own hands. All of it, Reid. All 30. He did not answer me. He did not move. I could see, in the lamplight, a very thin track of wet starting at his lower eyelid and disappearing into the corner of his nose. He did not wipe it. He told me tonight he has been in love with me since the night my mother died. Since I was 19. He moved into our building 3 months ago. He went to the club twice and asked Tomas for my schedule. He wanted you to leave. He thought if you left, I would come to him. Reid put his face in his hands. Jesus Christ. Yeah. He came to my office once. 3 months ago. He came to my office, Sawyer. He sat across from me at lunch. He told me he was worried about you. He said you had been off, and he just wanted me to know in case I had not noticed. He set the whole thing up. I know. I did not even check. I did not even check the email account. I just kept opening them, every 2 weeks. Like medicine. I did not say anything to that. I did not have to. He sat back in his chair. He looked at me across the desk. His eyes were the color of weak light through a glass of water, the way they always went when he had cried and then stopped. Sawyer, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I should have asked you. I should have asked you the day the first one came in. I have been a coward. Yeah, I did not soften it. I did not say no. No, you were doing your best. I did not let him have that, because giving him that would have been a kindness I could not afford. I needed him to hear the word. You were a coward. He took it. He did not argue with me. He nodded. You did not let me speak. You packed my mother's photograph into a wet cardboard box on a public sidewalk, and you left it for me to find. I had to drive 4 trips in the rain. I had to check into a Holiday Inn off Aviation Avenue. I have been sleeping on Kenji's couch for 2 nights because I did not know where else to go, and I was sleeping on the couch of the man who was doing this to me. Do you understand? Sawyer, I am not finished. You let your mother close the door in my face. You told your secretary, who I had a sandwich with at Christmas, to bar me from your floor. You sat in this study with that note, and you drank yourself sick. And not one time in the 72 hours you have been hating me did you pick up the phone and ask me. Not one time. His shoulders were shaking. He was not making any sound. I love you, I said. I am going to love you for a long time, Reid. Probably the rest of my life. The way a person loves a place they used to live. But I do not know how to come back from this. I do not know how to come home tonight and put my key back on the kitchen counter and lie down in our bed and trust that the next time somebody sends you a photograph of me out of context, you will ask me about it before you take my life apart again. I do not know how to learn that. I am 26 years old. I do not know how. He looked up. His face was a wreck. What do you want me to do? I don't know what I want you to do. I just want you to know what he did. And I want you to know that I did not do it. And I want you to know that what hurts me most, right now, sitting in this chair across from you, is not what he did. It is that you let him. It is that you sat next to me at dinner for 6 months, and you watched me and you did not see me. He did not break us, Reid. He just held the knife. You are the one who used it. He was crying openly now. Not loudly. Just steady, the way grown men cry, with his hands flat on the desk. I stood up. I picked up the laptop. I am going to leave Charleston for a little while. I have a cousin in Asheville. He has a guest room. I can teach swim at the Y up there. I think I need to be somewhere I do not drive past this house every day. I do not know if I am gone for a month or a year or longer. I just know I cannot do it here. Not yet. Sawyer, I am not asking you to come find me. I am asking you to let me go. He stood up. He came around the desk. He did not try to touch me. He stopped about 3 feet from me and he said, in a voice that was just barely his, "Can I write to you? Just sometimes. Just so you know I am thinking about you. Not asking for anything. Just so you know." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had turned the lamp on in our front window every night because dark rooms made him sad. I looked at the man who had stood at the bottom of 3 flights of stairs 8 months ago in flip-flops and helped me carry every box of my life into his home. I looked at the man who had failed me. Completely. In the only test that had ever mattered. I said, "Yeah, you can write." I walked out of the study. I walked down the long hall. Adelaide was sitting on the bench in the front hallway, with her hands folded in her lap, and as I came past her, she stood up. She did not say anything. She just put her hand, very briefly, on my forearm. She squeezed once. She let go. She opened the front door for me. I stepped out onto Trad Street. The rain had stopped. The gas lamps were flickering. I walked across the cobblestones to my truck, and I got in, and I sat with my hands on the wheel for a minute, and then I started the engine, and I drove north. 2 days later, I packed the 4 cardboard boxes into the bed of my truck, and I drove up to Asheville. The drive took 5.5 hours. I cried for the first 2, and then I stopped, because crying is a thing your body decides to be done with whether you are ready or not. My cousin Daniel met me in his driveway in a flannel shirt and a pair of work boots, and he hugged me without asking any questions, and he showed me to his guest room, which had a quilt his late wife had made on the bed, and a window that looked out at the Blue Ridge. I stayed in that guest room for 3 months. I got a job at the downtown YMCA teaching kids to swim. I started seeing a therapist named Owen, who Daniel had used after his wife died. Owen was a 60-year-old man with a gray ponytail and a voice that did not push. The first session, he asked me what I thought I had lost, and I said, "Reid." And he said, "Anything else?" And I sat in his office for a long time before I said, "I lost the version of myself that thought trust was the same as safety." I never heard from Kenji again. I never tried to find out. I heard, third hand, through a friend of a friend, that he moved to New York within a month and took a job at a firm in Brooklyn. He sent me one letter through the mail about 6 weeks after I left Charleston. It was on yellow legal pad paper. He did not sign it. He just wrote, "I will spend the rest of my life knowing what I did to you. I am sorry. I will not contact you again." I read it once, sitting at Daniel's kitchen table, and then I lit the burner on the gas stove, and I held the corner of the paper in the flame, and I dropped it into the sink, and I watched it curl up into ash, and I ran water over the ash until the sink was clean. Reid wrote me. Not often. Maybe one letter a month. They were short. He never asked me to come back. He just told me small things. The cat had a vet appointment. The Henderson case had settled. He had started running again. His mother had asked about me. I never wrote back. I read every one. In the 8th month, a postcard came. It was a stock photo of Charleston Harbor at dusk, the kind of thing you buy at a gas station. The back said, in his handwriting, I think about you. I hope you are well. I am not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I know now what I lost. I kept the postcard in a drawer. I did not answer it. I do not know if I am going to. Some answers take a long time. Around month 10, I met a man named Brody at a coffee shop on Haywood Road. He was 31 years old. He taught geometry at the public high school. He had been divorced once, peacefully, from a woman he was still friendly with. He had a golden retriever named Banjo, who he walked every morning past my cousin's house, which is how I had been seeing him for weeks before I ever spoke to him. He asked me out the 3rd time we ran into each other. I said yes, but slowly. We have been seeing each other for 6 months now. He has not yet stayed the night. We are not in a hurry. He asks me questions before he assumes things. He does not check his phone when we are eating dinner. He laughs at his own jokes before I get to them. He is not Reid. He is not somebody I would have looked at a year and a half ago. And he is, slowly, beginning to feel like a kind of love I did not know was available to me. The kind that does not arrive in a thunderstorm and does not leave in a stack of cardboard boxes on a curb. Here is what I want to tell you. Before I let you go, the hardest part about being lied about is not what they say. It is realizing, after the dust has settled, how much of yourself you handed them, willingly, before they ever turned it into ammunition. Kenji did not break into my life. I let him in. I gave him my keys. I gave him my secrets. I made him my emergency contact on 3 different forms over 7 years. I trusted him with the worst night of my life. And then I was shocked when the person who had been holding every door for me decided to use one of them to lock me out. Some people love you the way fire loves a house. They want all of you, all the way down to the foundation. And if you cannot give them that, if you build a life with someone else, they will burn the whole thing down so that nobody else gets to live in it. What I have learned, in 2 years of Asheville mornings in Owen's office and Brody's slow, careful patience, is that love is not a key somebody takes from you. Love is a key you are given. The difference between the two is the entire story. If you have ever been lied about by somebody who said they loved you, leave a comment below. Just your first name, just the word survived. I am going to read every one of them tonight, sitting on Daniel's porch with a cup of coffee while the fog comes off the mountains. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe before you go. There are more of us than people think, and I am not done telling these. It took me a long time to understand that the 4 boxes on the sidewalk in front of Reid Whitaker's apartment that April afternoon were not the worst thing that had happened to me. The worst thing had happened 6 months earlier, in a quiet apartment 1 floor below ours, where my best friend sat at a desk and decided that loving me meant making sure nobody else got to. I am 28 years old now. I live in a small cabin outside Asheville. I have a porch. I have a dog who is not mine but visits every morning. I have a man who is learning me at my own speed. The keys to my house live on 1 hook by the door, and I am the only person who holds them. That, I think, is the part Kenji never understood. Love is not a key you take. It is a key you are given, and the only person who decides who gets to hold mine, ever again, is me.